A few things I should mention before the video. I've had a few problems with the mini grease gun lubing device that I show towards the end of the video that I'd like to go over now. One of those was that I thought the gun had airlocked after I recharged it. That might have been true, but I think my lube mixture was too stiff, causing the spring plunger not to be able to move the lube into the forcing cylinder. Another problem was lube getting past the plunger and into the spring area. I emptied out the grease from a cartridge that came with the gun and currently using that to house the grease. I'm hoping that that'll make a better seal. Also, the rod would slip and not stay locked back, so I cut some notches along its length of my Dremel cutoff wheel, and that seems to have solved this issue. Hopefully these changes will work because I really like using it, and so does a friend that has stopped using lube because of the hassle of putting the lube onto the end of the chambers.
So we can go back in time here for a few seconds, and this is what I was doing back in the 60s when I first started shooting black powder. Replica arms, gun that I first purchased. And look inside the box here. This is what I'm finding, kind of a felt that was impregnated with some kind of a lubrication, and the discs cut out of that, and that's basically what I was doing. Thing was, it wasn't very long before I kind of closed the box on that way of shooting because I just couldn't get the accuracy that I would like to, much like my friend here I'm going to talk about in a minute that has almost given up shooting the black powder guns because of probably the same reason. So I was using sort of a half lubricated fell wad back in those days. Probably read some of the information that was in Six Guns by Keith, got my ideas from that. But anyway, we kind of graduated up from that to some kind of Crisco lube that we would put in these syringes here, and then put that down the chamber and kind of squeeze some of that out, and that kind of worked for a while, but I found out there's some real issues with that. I've seen some videos that folks are using these kind of things. Like I say, was using that too, but here's one of the things I haven't seen talked about yet is how you reload this feller here. When you go to pull this plunger back, you're going to find out that it doesn't want to move back so easily because there's a suction thing going on. You've actually got to suck up air through the tube down in here in order to get that thing to move, and if your lube's a little on the stiff side, it's cold weather, I mean that just doesn't pull back. When mine pulled back here on this one, I found a kind of a gooey black mess because some of the lube that was being used there, I don't know if it's Crisco or whatever I had in there, is actually dissolving the rubber on this one. Now if you got plastic in there, most of these syringes don't use just a pure plastic thing. That might work, but certainly these rubber things are going to give some issues when it comes to time to reload. Probably one of the first methods that I had used there would be the finger method with some of the stuff like the boar butter here, and that definitely works. Yeah, it's a little on the messy side, but it'll get you by. Lately I've gone to using my own home brew here stuff, and I'll kind of go down with a knife, popsicle stick or whatever, and get that on there and then smear that into on the top of the chambers there at the end of the cylinder, and that seemed to work out pretty well. I've been doing that for a couple of years. Here's a device we went to after finding out that these things had some real issues. Kind of a cookie decorator here thing, but that one at least you can pull a plunger back on. I can take this section here off and then load it back up, and that doesn't work too bad, but it's not really designed to get into the chambers too well with this end. And a friend I was talking about does a lot of shooting. I mean, he bought two of the 1858 Remington repros, and I think he bought something like 8 or 10 cylinders because he likes to, like I say, he likes to shoot a lot. So he was using actually a Crisco lube for a while, and then he read somewhere or saw somewhere where he wouldn't need to use that if his ball fit tight, so he could actually shave off some of the lead. So he actually went to nothing. Now this is not his target, but this is a target that I shot here a while back, and I use absolutely no lube or wads with this target. And while things I think were going well, I'm shooting here pretty decent, but then I've got these things going on, and that's kind of what drove me out of the liking of the black powder shooting guns early on. So here's what I've come up with. I've been using now for a couple of weeks and really like the idea. Seems to work out well, and this one I'm going to recommend that he uses for his lubing if he wants to go lube and start shooting again. Basically one squeeze of my handle here, and I get just about the right amount of lube that comes out there for a 44. If I'm using a 36 caliber, I'm going to use a little less than that, maybe like 2/3 of a squeeze. Yeah, and I realize, of course, that this is not something that probably wants to be seen on the cowboy action range line, but as far as people shooting off the bench and doing that kind of stuff, well, I found it works out really well. I mean, I'm storing quite a bit of lube in this thing. I've had, the only main issue I've had with this thing is when I go to reload it, I'll get some air in this thing, and sometimes you got to pump this handle several times, maybe even take the barrel back off and reload it. But I would not recommend just loading a small amount of lube in this thing. I mean, once you got it going and that spring in there and the plunger is shoving this lube up into your area here that forces it out the end, that's the way to go. So, you know, load up a half a cylinder when you're doing it, then you might avoid that airlock problems. So I hope this information has been useful to somebody, and maybe somebody can improve their shooting with it, or at least make things a little easier for them. I did install what I had on the end here. I got a grease fitting, 45-degree grease fitting, and then I found some 3/16 tubing there. Put a little section of that on, and the angle that's at, you can slide it right down into the chambers and apply the lube right there. So anyway, that's it for this one, and I hope everyone has a good what's left of the summer and safe shooting.